All right, we're on. Tanica Jamison, all the way from Houston, Texas. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. Now, what I realized is, as I was sitting here reading your resume, you swam at Texas, then you coached at Texas A&M, and now you're in Houston, Texas. So, did you just get convinced that Texas was its own country?
I'm not there yet, but I'm definitely sipping the Kool-Aid.
So, why Texas? What is it about Texas that makes it so great?
When I was looking for schools way back when in the 1900s, I wanted to find a place where I would fit in and feel like I was part of something that's bigger than myself and be part of a family. And I found that at the University of Texas, and the weather here is brilliant. I mean, I have shorts and I have a long sleeve on because it's cold in my office, but shorts and a t-shirt walking around in February. So that's definitely a big draw. And the people here are really friendly, and my family lives here, so there's really no big draw for me to leave the state.
Really? You've never been kind of thought about of maybe I should go and check out another state for a while?
Oh no, I mean I lived in Pennsylvania and I lived in California, so I've been on basically every coast, and I just found a home here in the state of Texas. When my mother moved here my sophomore year, going into my sophomore year of yeah, and to Houston, and my twin sister went to University of Houston, ironically. So it's just a family affair here. So
Now there's legitimate rivalry between almost the three schools in itself because they're all in Texas. So you
right.
swam at Texas, then you coach at Texas A&M, massive rivalries there. But then there's also got to be some sort of rivalry with Houston. So where do you feel comfortable on weekends when they're playing football games and things like that? You must be torn in different directions.
When I first started my job at A&M, for the first year, I was probably heckled by someone either at A&M or friends who found out that I was working at A&M.
Hmm.
So I kind of got used to that. But you root for the team that's paying your paycheck.
Yeah, yeah.
So when it
Mhm.
comes down to Houston, going as A&M or Texas, I'm going to root for Houston.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
on an off chance, I'm going to root for my since I'm a master's from A&M and in the undergrad from Texas, so I have multiple schools I can cheer for.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, listen, hey, congratulations. You just won your second title since you've taken over as head coach there at Houston Swimming and Diving. So, another big congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. It was definitely exciting. We leave our fans in suspense.
What do you mean by that? It was a tight race?
It was a tight race. It came down to the last individual race.
Wow. Okay.
So we basically were down after the 200 breaststroke, and in the finals of the 200 butterfly, our girls. I mean, they stepped up and they got the job done. And basically, all we had to do was finish the relay, and we were going to win the meet.
Wow. Now you're in the AAC. What's the AAC?
The American Athletic Conference.
American Athletic. So who did it come down to? You and who else? Who was the title race between?
It was between our program and Florida International. They're recently added to the conference next year, but from my understanding, their conference is dissolving, and so the four teams came in a year early to compete.
So how many teams make up the conference now?
Currently, there are 11 teams, I believe.
Oh, pretty competitive then, huh?
Oh yeah, and we were
Yeah.
looking forward to it. So
Yeah. So when it's head to head like that, as a coach, how much coaching do you do? Like when it's basically a line call of like, hey, we're down to the last event,
mhm.
and everybody knows it on the pool deck. The teams know it. So how much coaching can you do there, or should you do in that instance?
There's really not much more that we can add to it because you don't want to add any extra pressure to your athletes. But the way that we approach just the meet in general is, our team gets better each session.
Mm.
And we wanted to win each session. And if we do that, then we're going to give ourselves a really good opportunity. I mean, this year was a little bit different where we had diving start the meet. So they dove Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And so our divers did a phenomenal job of giving us a really sizable lead. And as the meet went, we knew that we were going to be strong in some events and weak in others. And so it's just really just maintaining, points, getting people in the heats that they need to be in finals, and then doing their job when they get to finals.
Yeah, it's very strategic, and there's a lot that goes into it. How much preparation can you actually put in for a meet like that, where everybody knows the ebbs and the flows, right? You
Hmm.
understand that, okay, these are our strengths, and we're going to be good here, and then these are the events we're going to take a hit. But in terms of taking the hit, we don't want our confidence to take a hit during that period of time.
Right. For us, I mean, it all begins at invite, right? So it's a pretty similar format where you have a 3-day meet.
Hmm.
When you get the conference, you have that additional day for relays, but it really starts there, and you learn a lot from that meet. I mean, for us, we do a 3-day drop taper, and we get some good performances at that meet. But then we also learn a lot. So we have some athletes that do really well. We have some athletes who may just be a little bit off. And so as a coaching staff, we use that information as we continue to prepare for our conference meet just a few short months later. And then we draw from that. We draw from the strengths and weaknesses that we had at Invite. We draw from the strengths and weaknesses that we've had at various dual meets. And then just really play that up. I mean, there's nothing more that we can do at the meet training wise. So it's either you're ready or you're not. And so it's really just managing emotions, managing um, the team atmosphere, and just hope. And it's not so much hoping for the best, but just hoping that what we've taught them the entire season, that they're going to step up on the blocks and be the confident athletes that we train them to be.
Mm. Now, when you map this out beforehand, probably the week before, when the psych sheet comes out or whatever it is, and you kind of map it out on paper, was it supposed to be this close?
Yes,
Yeah.
not this close, but we knew that it was going to be a close meet, that it would not be a runaway.
Right.
Thankfully, we have a good group of divers, but our team, last year kind of had the same similar situation when we lose some key athletes prior to the meet,
Mm.
and so it's just reorganizing and revamping and rethinking the entire conference meet. And with the loss of a couple this year and last season, we still had confidence going into each meet, and we knew that the athletes that we were taking to the meet were going to perform, and that's how we train. And so on paper it was going to be a closer meet than probably what others thought, but what we thought was going to be this close.
Now, when you take over a program like this, that obviously won, I believe, like 5 championships in a row before you get there. You're now at the end of your 7th championship in a row. So you've got a decision to make. Do I come in as the head coach and say, I want to keep this streak alive. I want to put all of our eggs in one basket, or do you look at it and think to yourself, we need to aim bigger. We need to get women to the NCAAs. We need to perform at our best at that meet. And if we have to take a hit at the conference level to sacrifice that performance, then that's what we do. How do you, process all that?
That's a really good question. Coming into a program that has had so much success prior, is is good and bad. Is
Right.
you have the expectations from your administration, from your fans, from your
Mm-hmm.
alumni,
Mm-hmm.
and from the student athletes. But then you don't want to have that complacency of, oh, this is just going to happen, because that's not realistic. And so the way that myself and Coach Allen and Coach Bob have kind of designed our program, we're looking in the future. We're looking 2, 3, 4, or 5 years down the road, especially being able to move into the Big 12 conference this upcoming July. This season, our main focus was preparing for that transition.
Mm.
The Big 12 is a pretty dominant, especially with the University of Texas in that conference. To be competitive, you have to start thinking that way. And so this year, we're really just starting to plant the seeds of where our program is going, and the expectations of what's going to happen in a year's time. So it's really managing, the athletes that we have now, continuing to get the best out of all of our student athletes, and then have that expectation as we move to the Big 12 of, we really need to step up our game, because there's a lot of great things that's going to happen, not only for our team, but for all of our athletics for the University of Houston. And it's just going to raise up the playing field.
Now, Texas are going to the SEC, though, aren't they?
I believe they are, but I think they're going to be there for one more year.
Okay.
So we'll
So
get
you
them for
might
a season.
get them for a season. So,
Mhm.
well, but beyond that, right? Like, yes, the conference is a big deal, and you just stated that. But like, as a coach, you've been part of teams that have been top 3 at NCAAs. You know,
Hmm.
you've been there. You've been that person who've taken these teams and competed at the highest level. So don't you have aspirations for your team? Is it possible for a Houston team to even compete at that level nationally?
Yeah, it's possible for any team. And I tell my team, all if you look at the predominant teams currently, every team had to start somewhere. And so where we're starting is the beginning of our process towards that level, right? And it's not going to come all at once. It's going to take, recruiting year after recruiting year to get not only continue to build off of our athletes that we have here who are doing a phenomenal job, but also adding in pieces that are going to help us get to that level. And then once you start getting more athletes to the NCAA level and, not only competing, but finaling, then you're going to start getting more recruits that are going to be even more interested in your program. I mean, our facilities that we have here are top notch, and we have an indoor 50-meter facility that can host a huge conference meet. They can't host an NCAA meet, but we can host a conference meet. And so
Mm.
our facilities are phenomenal to be able to bring in athletes not only from within the United States but across the world, and having a lot of various attributes, whether it's having multiple airports or living in a city. There's so much to do around our town that's going to draw people in, and especially moving to the Big 12, we're looking forward to using that as a stepping stool to start getting to the NCAA level and getting in that top 15, hopefully in the next 5 or 6 years.
Well, what about in terms of the struggle of the mentality? You know, you come into a program and they're, like you said, not complacent, but they're happy to be winning these conference titles, right? And
Mhm.
you, as somebody who's been successful at the highest level on the NCAA level, are coming in and saying, "Hey, there's more than that. We can go beyond this." How do you switch that mentality of the women for them to say, "We're doing well, we don't need to be pushed that hard. We're happy over here. We're winning here." But you're saying, "Hey, there's more on this national level," and the mentality is different. You know it.
Mhm.
And then what that creates is this kind of angst amongst the group of like, who's coming with me over here? Because we're going to this NCAA level, and anyone
Mhm.
can do it. We have the facilities, we have the people, so it's like you're like pushing that, and they're like, so there's this resistance in a way, right?
There can be, but I think that's with anything. If you have a new head coach going into a predominant program, there's going to be some type of pushback for any program because there's going to be change, right? And so the mentality of our athletes is, yes, this is something that's I wouldn't say brand new, but if we're looking to start making a name for our program, then
Mm.
that is a new mindset. And so the new mindset is not only continuing to be the best, student that you can be and be the best athlete that you can be, but how can we get the best out of that and take it to that next level that maybe you never thought that you can reach? Because we have a lot of talented athletes on our team that no one really knows about. And so, and we're starting to get more out of those athletes. And sometimes you have those diamond in the rough. Sometimes you have athletes who may not have had coaches in the past that truly believed in them and really, you know, delved into their talent. And we're starting to see that more, and we're starting to, build more confidence with our current teammates and our future teammates that are coming in.
Yeah, I experienced this at Auburn. When I came to Auburn in '97, we hadn't won a national title before. We'd won some conference titles, and David Marsh had kind of changed the mentality. He'd come into Auburn in the early '90s, slowly kind of shifted the mentality, and I've talked to him at length of the things, the struggles that he had to go through, and then they finally win the conference for a couple of times in a row, and the team thinks they're there, and David's like, "No, there's more. We're going
Hmm.
beyond." And
Yep.
so my first year that I came in as a freshman, we hadn't won a national championship, and we end up winning. And me walking into the team, I came into a mentality of like, we want to be the best. And it
Hmm.
wasn't necessarily from the coaches at that point in time. By the time I got in there, it was really being run by the athletes. It was an
Hmm.
athlete mentality of like, this is not good enough. We want to be national champions. Like, it's nice to win these conferences, but when I walked into the locker room, like, guys held me accountable. Like, Brett,
Hmm.
get your shit together. Like, we
Yeah.
need you to step up. We need you. And they were on me daily. So do you feel like you're getting those women in the locker room that are starting to adopt that mentality?
I do. I do. And like I said earlier, it comes with, how and who you are recruiting. There's questions that you can ask athletes that kind of give you an idea of what type of athlete that is. So it goes beyond just what you're able to do time wise. Are you going to come into my program or to our program and be a leader? Are you going to come into our program and have that high expectation of getting to NCs, of whatever that, whatever the level it is, but it has to be higher than the level that we're currently competing at. And so that's how you build. And I'm sure that's how, Auburn did it, and any program who is currently successful and have had those athletes that's come in, and the team is driving that. And that's what we're doing here. Our culture is a family culture, but it's also turning into a culture of expectation of getting better and leaving a strong legacy. And that's what we try to teach our athletes, that, what they're doing now, whether they're here or with us when we make our long-term goal, is that they're setting the footstool, right, of where we're going. Because of what they did, we're able to go out and recruit more athletes that are going to have that same mentality of moving this program forward and doing something that this program has never done before.
How do you deal with the challenge of taking a young athlete and getting them to see that there's more in them? Like as a coach, that's kind of the ultimate goal, right? Is to take this athlete and get them to do things they didn't think were possible for themselves, right? And even for a team, once you have enough people buying into that mentality, then you have a team of people doing that. But like individually, I'd imagine, how do you do it individually where somebody is just resistant to going to that next level or figuring that next level out? And it's a very sensitive topic these days, because it's, we certainly don't want to get into this idea of bullying or whatever it is, but it's like you're forcefully trying to get someone to do something they don't think they can do, and it's a very uncomfortable situation. So as a coach, how do you manage that?
So that's a loaded question, right? I think with how I coach is, and this has been, transparent since my first day as an assistant coach, is that my goal and my role is to help my student athletes be the best student athlete that they can be. And it's our job to be able to see the talent in them. And every athlete's going to be motivated differently, right? So it's learning that student athlete and learning what motivates them, learning what buttons you can and cannot push, but also having just that expectation of where I see our team being. I mean, I think you can talk to some of my girls, and we have, I wouldn't say it's come to Tanica meetings, but there are some meetings to where, my expectation is pretty simple. When you get to this level, there are athletes their times are the same. And so you have to find a way to be better than the athlete that's next to you, whether that's coming down to your turns, your breakouts, your finishes, your starts, pace, all those things matter. And so in practice, that's the best time to be able to utilize those strengths and to, exploit some of the strengths or weaknesses that our athletes have. And so when you talk about building a legacy and building a team, those expectations come from within the team, that you're going to make it to the 12 and a half or the 15, or you're going to make the no breather, or you're going to make the breathing pattern. So that starts building leadership within the team, as well as the expectation of how to get the best out of each individual. Because in our sport, it's a team sport, but it's an individual sport wrapped in a team environment. So each individual has to do their part for our overall team win or team goal. And so it's up to each individual and getting the best out of each individual to hold themselves accountable, and then also hold their teammate accountable, so that we're all going in the same direction.
Yeah. Talk to me about the difference between being an assistant and being a head coach. So when you're at Texas A&M, you're assistant to Steve Boltman, and one of the most successful programs in the country there. You guys won SEC championships, I believe, didn't you?
We did.
By the time you got to the SEC, yeah, I'm trying to put the timeline together. You did win, I know that. So, and then you were very successful at NCAA level, like I said, top 3 a couple of years in a row there. So, what is it to be a great assistant? And then ultimately we can move on to what does it mean? What's the difference between being an assistant and a head,
There are a lot of things that go behind the scenes that an assistant coach does not know that the head coach does.
Mm,
Being a great assistant means that you are, you know, helping the head coach do whatever he or she requires. That you are
right.
their voice, you are their sounding board. That you're speaking and saying the same message
Hmm.
to help continue the team goal and team drive. But then, you know, also being able to use your strengths to help the head coach build a team. And so being an assistant, I was able to learn so much from Coach Boltman over the years, and seeing just how successful he was, and the confidence that he has, and his obviously his coaching abilities, and the years of coaching that he's had. I mean, that's a wealth of knowledge that you cannot buy. So I was fortunate to be able to work with such a leader that will help me transition to being a head coach. And being a head coach, that transition from assistant to a head is there's more stress.
Mm.
As assistant, it's like if the team fails, well, you know, the first person that they blame is a head coach. So now when you're in the head coach, now that falls on you, which is fine. I mean, I have really broad shoulders, and it's really hard to push me over, but I was ready for this role. I've been a leader since since I don't know, beginning of time. I don't know. I've always wanted to be out front. I've always wanted to help. I've always wanted to, just lead by example, and being able to step into this role, coming off as so much success, and being able to continue that success, um, has been phenomenal. And I'm looking forward to continuing to grow as a head coach, because if you meet any head coach and they say they know it all, well, you shouldn't swim or compete for that coach, because it's always a learning process, right? And so I'm excited for this time, and I'm excited for the time that I had at A&M, and my first job at the University of Pittsburgh, to be able to use that knowledge to continue to help my team here at University of Houston.
Well, you stayed with Steve for 10 years, so
Mhm.
you were a very loyal assistant, and I'm sure you grew a great deal during that time. How does an assistant know when it's the right time to move on, and maybe take that next step to be a head coach?
I think every individual is different. For myself, I knew that we were building something great at Texas A&M, and one of my hopes and goals was to try and win a national championship there. Um, and I wanted to stay and see it through. But then opportunities started to come around, and when this opportunity came, be able to be close to my family and to take something that has a potential of being something great. I mean, that was a huge driving force for me. And in my mind, I didn't want to put my name on just any program. I wanted to be able to go somewhere to where I can make an impact. And I felt that coming to the University of Houston at that time was going to be my place to where I can start making an impact as a head coach. And then, being able to be closer to my family, and, have my daughter be around her grandmother and her aunt. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. I'd imagine as an assistant, you probably had more of a group, whereas as a head coach, you're overseeing the whole program. So how do you find that balance from where you were, like kind of leading a group maybe under Steve, to now having this whole holistic kind of approach to the program? Where do you find where you fit in as a head coach?
That's a great question. One of my probably weaknesses was probably, even though I worked for the best breaststroke coach in the country, well, it was breaststroke. And obviously I hired a coach who swam breaststroke, and he knows how to coach breaststroke. And so I'm learning a lot from him and continuing to use some of the things I learned from Steve. But when you look at the totality, I mean, swimming is swimming. Obviously, you have your specificities with, sprint or mid distance
Hmm.
or distance. But, coaching the groups is the same. I mean, I don't want to say it's rocket science, because it's not, but, how, and I might be one of those, probably the worst coach to ask, because I'm a coach that goes by feel.
Mm.
And I'm not a coach that, kind of documents everything, and, have to hit a certain yardage per week, but I have an idea of where we should be at certain times of the season. I don't know if I make my assistant kind of nervous, but I have an idea of where we're going, and so far so good. We've had a lot of success, but when I'm coaching all the groups, we do have that break where maybe Coach Allen is working with the breaststrokers, I'm working with the sprinters or mid distance or distance. And so it's always a learning curve and learning process. And I have a lot of great friends that I can call on and ask them questions of how to get the best out of each group. And so I'm always learning. I don't know everything, but I do have a good grasp of how to coach each stroke in each group.
What about while you were under Steve? How did he best utilize you? So, how did he make you feel important? How did he make you feel valued as an assistant? How did he allow you to feel like you had a stake in this? You know?
Uh, Great question. He did a phenomenal job of allowing me to be me, and really just kind of challenging our athletes to be their best and finding ways to challenge them in that sense, whether it's going back to those small details. I'm sure if you ask any of my athletes from that time, they'll probably say the same thing is, I was able to go from group to group. That was one of the things I loved working with Steve, is that we weren't just kind of coaching one specific group the entire time. So we were able to have eyes on every athlete and every group and see what's going on. But then, my role was really just to just hold them accountable and get and push and challenge them to be their very best, because the time that they have with us is so limited and short. And, going back to, being able to perform and compete and, place in the top 4, top 3, top 10, all those athletes that are at that meet, the times are similar. So how can we get the best out of each athlete? And I think I did a really good job with him and helping our athletes get the best performance possible.
Now, you did say earlier you were going to root for the team that's paying you. The team
Mhm,
that's paying you now is Houston, and you're in
mhm.
the same state as your former head coach. So I'd imagine you're recruiting against each other as well. You're
Yes.
probably standing on a lot of the same pool decks, recruiting the same athletes. So you spent 10 years with this man. You know his weaknesses as well. How does that come into play in terms of recruiting? How much of, I mean, how do you recruit, right? Like you want to be competitive and you want to get the best athletes, and your competitors' weaknesses. So like, how do you balance all of that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for us, I mean, we're always looking for athletes who are versatile, right? We try to find athletes that can do multiple strokes. One of the things that I did take from my last position is, we do a lot of stroke work for all the strokes for everybody, and I think that's just a really good base. And so when you're recruiting against, someone like a Steve or a Carol, you're just trying to bring in athletes to believe in what you're doing with your program. I can't control what other programs are doing. I can't control, how other programs are placing, but I know where our program is going. And there's a lot of draw, I believe, that athletes will want to come to a program to where not only will they make an immediate impact, but also they're going to be part of something that has never been done before. And I know for me, if I were coming, looking at various schools and being able to hear that kind of message, that there's a possibility of me going to a university to where I can leave a stamp and make a change to where that program is going, I'm going to look heavily at that program, because there's a lot of fun in that. And not saying that going to a program that's dominant and, performing there and doing well isn't doesn't equal, but I do think there is something unique about coming to a program to where, because you were there, you helped that team go to X, Y, and Z. So competing against, the universities within the state, or specifically competing against Steve. I mean, if someone chooses that school over us, I mean, I wish them the best, because I know they're going to a great program, but I also know we have a great program here.
Yeah, good answer. I like the fact that you focus on yourself and your strengths, and don't focus on necessarily the other team's weaknesses. But it certainly must be hard sometimes when you've got someone you just want to be like, oh, I wish I could just say that, but I can't. So
Yeah.
anyway, I've been there. But what's next then? What's the kind of the 5-year plan here for you? You think?
5-year plan is just getting better every year. I mean, we're going to our last chance meet here today and tomorrow, and hopefully get some girls qualified for NCs. And then when we take that step and move into the Big 12, the resources that we have are going to be greater. Hopefully we're getting more support from fans around the city and around the world, and continuing to recruiting those athletes that are pretty dominant now, but then also some of those under the radar kind of athletes. And then once we start moving and using this this train that we're on, this successful train, we're going to start making some big strides here. So in the next 5 years, I'm hoping to place at NCs, be in that top 20. And if not, we're going to do everything we possibly can to be there. We want to get relays there scoring. We want divers there scoring, individuals there scoring. But it takes time, and we're definitely moving in that right direction.
What's the mentality of the athletic department? Just keep winning conference and we don't really care about NCAAs, or it's like, hey, we need to get some NCAA results here. What's their mentality?
It's all the above. And I mean, I hold myself to the highest expectations of getting the best out of our athletes, our student athletes. Winning conference is definitely something that is on the minds of our administration as well as our teams and from our alumni and fans. But also they brought me here because they're looking to start moving towards being competitive at the NCAA level. And so I love that challenge, and I'm excited for that challenge, and we're starting to make moves towards that.
What about, I mean, you're a role model now. I mean, you're a female head coach. So it's like how, if someone is looking up to you, and what would be your advice to them, like a young woman coming into the sport as a young coach for the first time and kind of seeing where you are, what's your advice to someone like that?
My advice would just be stick to who you are. You're going to the time from being an assistant going into if you want to become a head coach can be short, it can be long, but there's always things that you can learn as an individual, as an assistant, and then using those talents to move to the head coach. Don't sell yourself short. Be confident in who you are and your abilities, but also be humble enough to learn from others and seek advice from others, and be coachable even as a coach, because if you're looking to become a head coach, all eyes are always going to be on you, so you have to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row when you take that step into becoming a head coach, because there's no fallback. You are it. And so that's why it's important as coming in as an assistant or even a volunteer coach to really start honing in on your own skills and learning what your skill set is, and also learning how to lead and be a great leader.
Well, there's also a shortage of women in coaching, in swim coaching as well. So,
Hmm.
but there's also a need for every program to have some balance as well in their program. So
Hmm.
there's this shortage, but then there's this demand of like we need equity, we need balance for sure. Like we need women to continue to come into coaching, and we want to
Hmm.
encourage that. But then on the
Hmm.
other side, there's a shortage. So, how does a young woman deal with not moving too fast at the same time, being in a position where it's like, hey, you got to learn, you got to grow, and
Hmm.
don't rush to a position that just it feels glamorous.
Right. And again, it goes back to, finding a program that best suits you. Like, you don't want to be that, you don't want to be, whether male or female, you don't want to be that coach that goes to a new job year after year after year. That doesn't look good. Like, goes back to that being humble part of learning where you are and staying where you are, and getting the most out of that position until you can use that to move ahead, or take a lateral move. But when you're talking about women being in this sport, there is a shortage. And I believe the reason why I became a coach is because, I had a female head coach, and she was my role model, and that was my inspiration to get into coaching. So I'm hoping that, the more, uh, not so much spotlight, but, being able to have as many female head coaches, and it's growing year by year, that's going to draw more females, more women into this sport, and into this coaching role. Um, it's always going to be that hard balance of getting more women into this sport, but yeah, I think there's a big move, and a big vibe of getting more females into the sport, and there's a lot of resources that are within you know our college atmosphere that are helping women continue to lead, but also bring in others. So there's a movement going, and it's exciting.
Do you have some aspirations too for some bigger things as well, like maybe leading a world championship team or an Olympic team down the road? Is that something that is on kind of the roadmap for you?
If it happens, it happens. That's not my main focus. My main focus is always to help. and be that person that helps our student athletes be the best that they can be. Now, if we're able to get athletes to those levels and be consistent at that level and get more eyes and more confidence from, USA Swimming or various international teams of the athletes that I coach to be able to lead for that country or for our country, that'd be great. But that's not my main focus. My main focus is for my athletes to be successful, both in and out of the water. And if it happens, it happens.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Listen, I appreciate this. It's been fun. Been nice catching up.
Yeah.
And where's the trophy, by the way?
Oh, it's back there somewhere.
Is the latest one's back there somewhere? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So do you have any qualified for NCAAs right now?
We do not. We have a few that are in a good range. So we're heading to A&M today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll get some there. If we don't get it this year, we'll definitely have a good amount next year. But I think we have some girls that can get it this week.
Now, do you have a mentality over the summer of like, we've got to put in the work, we've got to get better as a team, or are you more of relax, kind of chill over the summer?
It's a mixture of both. I mean, when we take our break after this meet or NCs, there's going to be that rebuilding phase. But our expectation is if you're training here with us in the summer, if you're going home, that you are competing and that you're training every day, because what you do in the summer dictates what you do,
Right.
come fall and come next winter. So it's important to use this time to continue to fine tune things that maybe we could have done better over this season and then implement that this summer. And then when they come back in the fall, we're ready to go because, there's no time lost with our sport. You can't just take, 3-4 weeks off and expect to have some great results come this time next year. So it's just finding and mending and melding all those into one of just, getting our girls to understand and believe and trust that what they're doing with us for the remaining of the year, whether it's in the summer or not, that what we're coming back in the fall, that we're going to be ready to go.
Cool. Well, good luck with everything, Tanica. I appreciate you doing this today, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.